Hello guys, and welcome to lesson 4. I'm going to be talking about the grand staff today. Now remember, as I'm recording, if you don't understand something, feel free to stop the video and loop back to where you need to see. And I very much suggest that while I'm going through this that you're writing stuff down too, because I know that there's some positive brain benefits for you whenever you combine some of the physical moving of the writing. So copy down what you need. If you need extra help, by all means, refer back to earlier points of the video or send me a message. So today, the grand staff, right? The grand staff. Now, we know this word. We know staff because we've talked about it for 3 lessons so far. We use the staff to communicate music. Because, remember, music is sound, right? So we have to have a way to help performers and help composers and all of those people. We have to give them a way to be able to create the music, right? They're creating it from the stuff that we wrote down most of the time. So the grand staff, I want you to start by drawing 2 staffs, right? So remember, a staff is 5 lines, and when we draw those 5 lines, it creates the 4 spaces. Right, so there's 1 staff, and then put a little space between them, right? So I'm like right down here. Here's my second staff. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I have 2 different staffs. Now, so far we've talked about 2 different types of clefs. That was lesson 2 and lesson 3. We talked about the treble clef and we talked about the bass clef, right? So this is what they look like. Treble clef, you know, that's a little tiny smushed one, and then here's the bass clef, you know, basically. And these 2 clefs, one refers to the higher sounding pitches, which is the treble clef or the G clef, and then one refers to the lower sounding pitches, which is the bass clef or the F clef, right? So treble, T-R-E-B-L-E, bass. Bass is also known as the F clef. Treble is also known as the G clef. Right, so we have 2 clefs. What the grand staff does is it gives us a kind of a shorter and a faster way to combine both of those together. So if we're talking about treble, remember those are the higher sounding ones. So go ahead and draw a treble clef on your first staff. Okay, and then the bottom staff, as you can probably guess, we're going to draw a bass clef. Alright, so there's our bass clef. Now right now we have a treble clef on the staff and a bass clef on the staff. I might refer to it as a treble staff, just a shorthand, and then a bass staff. Right, so that's just what these 2 things are, treble and bass. Now to create the grand staff, what we need to do is first draw a straight line down the edge of the tube, right? And it does go through the middle, this empty space that we have here in the middle. Okay, so straight line there. And then we add one more thing, we add a brace on the side of that straight line. So now what we have is not a treble clef or a treble staff and a bass staff, but we have a grand staff, which combines both of them together. So when we see this, we now have the range of everything between these 2 instead of just the notes we can get on this one and just the notes on this one. Right? We label them the same. We still know that this note, and I want to extend them some because we're going to add some notes to it. And I just don't want to run out of room. So extend it that much. And you can add as much as you want to on your paper, as much as you need. I'm not going to see it, so it doesn't matter to me. Right, so we're going to put a G on line number 2, just for now. Right, and remember that that is the note that we get right here where this flips around. The G clef, the treble clef, which shows us where G is. And then F down here. Now I'm going to have to kind of crunch stuff together, because as you can probably tell, what we're going to do is list all the notes between the 2. So let's start with the treble clef. If I go up, and I'm going to run out of room here, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Using these 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That's all we get, right? And once we get to the G, we have to restart and go back to the beginning. So we have a G here. That means we have to go back to the beginning for the next note. So in space 2 is A, then B. As we go up, we say the alphabet 4, D, E, and then F is that top line. Sorry, it's kind of smushed. If we go down on the staff, right, the treble staff up here, if we go down, we say the alphabet backwards. So from G, we would go to F, space 1, E. And that's what we need for now. Okay, we'll do the same thing down here. F is fourth line, right? And just to point it out, since we're seeing them both now, fourth line on the bass clef is F, but fourth line on the treble clef is D, right? So just make sure, it's very important that we have our clefs correct before we go into this. So F, if we go to the next space, F would move to G, because as we go up on the staff, we go forward with the letters. If we go down on the staff, we go backwards with the letters. So from G, our next note loops back to A, so that's our top line right here, A. And then we go down, so F would move to E, D, C, B, A, G. Okay, and this would match up with anything that you've done so far on either of the two previous lessons. Now, if you look at it, you notice that both of these, there's no space between any letters. So like F is right beside G, right? F and G. G is right beside A, and then up here, same thing. A is right beside a B, right? A to B, and so forth. But there's a big old gap here between this A on the top line and this E, the bottom line here, okay, between the two different clefs. So we have some notes that fit into this space, some notes that fit in there. If we were to continue going up with the bass clef, our next note would be what? A goes to B. So B is located right here above the top line. Okay? And then we'll go down one from this E, trying to work our way together to where they're right beside each other. If we go down one from E to this space, E is here, so we move to a D. So D is right below that first line. Almost there, right? B, then a space here in the middle, and then D. So for the first time, we're going to use what we call ledger lines. Right? So I'm just going to draw this note here for now. This ledger line can either go above this line, or below this line, or above this line, or below this one. Right? It can extend the staff in any direction, so we can keep ascending or descending. This note, one ledger line above the B, or one below the D, is the note C. And it has a special name, right? It's right in between the two staves, the treble and the bass, so we call this middle C. Right between the two, middle C. All right, with me so far? Now, just to talk about those ledger lines one more time, draw a small little staff down here. I'll adjust the camera here in a second. Okay, draw a short little staff, and we'll use a treble clef for now. As I said, ledger lines can go above the staff or below the staff. The thing you need to know is that the ledger line needs to be the same distance as all the other lines. Now, roughly the same distance. So we have one ledger line here, and if we want to go one below, we can do this, right? But the same distance as if we were adding a whole nother line. And then we just calculate it the same. So if we know that the top note here is F, right, we can go up here to see it. Up here on the top, to where that F is. We call this top line F. G would be above it, but below this line, right? So it's like G is in this space right here. This space. It would be like space number 5 if we were counting. On this first ledger line is A. And then you can keep going, just the lines have to be the same. So above the ledger line would be B. And the two ledger lines would be C, right? Assuming that we have a staff big enough to use it. And then the exact same thing is true here. We know that the bottom line, or line number 1 on the treble clef, is the note E, right? So if we go down one, between line 1 and this first ledger line is the note D, and we wrote this on, up here on the grand staff, right? That D right there. That means this ledger line is the note C, and you can keep going if you want. So we just have to keep the ledger lines in the same spot, B. And if we go down one more, what do we have? A, right? So what that would look like with the notes, just so that we're all clear, I want to draw one more staff. You don't have to do this. I just want to show you what it would look like a little bit clearer. Treble clef again, right? So we're there. The notes would continue going up. So if we do this E and an F, G would be there. Draw my ledger line. A, draw another ledger line. B sits on top. I want to keep going. 2 ledger lines. C. Alright, so notice that the first ledger line, even if I'm using different notes, is always as if I'm creating another line above it. It'd be the same for going below 2. So, just a quick reminder, we talk about the grand staff, combines treble and bass, and then we get this new note, or a few new notes, right? C, but more specifically middle C. And then this is just an example down here of what some of the ledger lines look like. It's a little messy, so I drew what the notes would actually look like over on this side. And it would be the same if we went down below the staff too. All right, so today, here are your exercises. I'd like you to pause the video and complete them on your own paper. And whenever you have completed them, to come back and I will go through the correct answers with you. All right, so let's do question number 1. It says to trace these braces, these things over here, then using the staff provided, draw the grand staff 3 times. Include the brace line and both clef sides. So it wants us to trace. I'll do one of them so you can see what it's talking about. There we go, we traced. All right, if we draw 3 different grand staffs, we first start by doing the straight line, and then the brace, and put a treble clef here, and a bass clef there. There's your grand staff. Do it 2 more times really quick. Okay, and then one last time, straight line going down, a brace, and a treble clef, and then a bass clef. All right, there you go. There's 3 grand staffs. Question 2 says, write the letter names of the notes from the treble staff. So we're just using treble clef. You always, whenever we're doing these kind of exercises, you have to look at what clef they want you to use, right? Because this could be treble or bass, any of that stuff. So you have to make sure you're using treble clef. All right, so you might want to underline that too. Gives you the first note, which is D, and you can refer to, we did this together on the lesson before, but you can refer back to that. Okay, so we have a D, then B, then another B, right, ledger line, A, E, C, G, D, E, D, B, ledger line there, C, C, F, and F. All right, so there's the exercise number 2. Remember, we were using the treble clef, so you got to refer to it. Now, question 3, write the letter names of the notes from the bass clef, or bass staff, right? I want to underline that. Always looking at the beginning to make sure we know what we're working with. Now these, D, B, F, C, D, G, C, B, G, B, A, D, E. Okay? There's the bass staff. Question 4. Write the notes indicated by the clefs and letter names in 2 places on the grand staff. Add ledger lines where necessary. So it wants us to write them in 2 places according to this down here. So let me just show you. It says treble clef and then 2 C's. So they did it on the treble clef staff, and then they wrote their 2 C's. The next one here is a B. All right, so bass clef B. So we'll do that one. We're down here on this clef. B is written on the second line or above the top line. All right, D for treble clef. So up here on the top, D would go below the staff or on the 4th line. B treble clef, right? We're here on the third line, or above the staff, 1 ledger line. C bass clef, 2nd space, or 1st ledger line above the bass clef. Treble clef C, so we know the 1 is here on the 3rd space, or 1 ledger line below the staff, and then a D bass clef, 3rd line, or above that 1 ledger line. So, as always, refer back to parts of the video where you need extra help. If you can't figure it out based on what we went over today, feel free to give me send me a message at Schoology or through email. And as always, have an excellent day.